Hi everybody. The IntelliJ editor that we're using is a professional tool with a lot of capabilities. That also means that it can be kind of difficult to learn the first time. So I'm going to show you what you can do to create a new project, and I'll show you what you can do at the start of each class whenever you want to write new programs. So first, open IntelliJ. Your screen may not look exactly like this, but you should see something that says New Project. Or if you don't, you can go to the File menu and go to New Project. We're always going to use a Java project, so you always want Java selected. And under Project SDK, it should say something. It doesn't have to say exactly what mine says, but if it says something like none found or no SDK, then you need to go back and look at the video about how to configure your IntelliJ. Or you could come to office hours and I could help you. Let's click Next. Everything is fine here. We don't need to click anything, so go ahead and click Next. And now we need to name the project. You can name the project whatever you want. So I'm going to call it Day 1 Examples. And I'll click Next. Or rather, I'll click Finish. It's asking, do we want to open this in the current window or a new window? So I'm going to open it in the current window. So on the left-hand side here, you see your project panel. Your project panel can sometimes get minimized, and if it does, you just move to these little tiny tabs on the left and click the one that says project, and it will open back up again. In fact, why don't you try that right now? Why don't you try to minimize yours and then reopen it, just so that you know what it looks like and feels like. So all of our programs are going to be inside this folder that says Day 1 Examples. So you can expand the folder, and then the folder that says SRC stands for source code. That's the Java programs that you're going to type. Right now it's just an empty folder, so we have to make a new one. So right click and go to New Java Class. The word class means something like program. So making a new Java class is like making a new Java program. And you can have lots of programs inside one project. They all go inside this one folder. So now we have to give our new program a name that's different than the project name. I'm going to call this one Day 1 Example. There are some rules about how you're allowed to name. You should always start with a capital letter, and you're not allowed to use any spaces. So I can't name it like this, Day space 1 space example. But it's normal to just remove the spaces and have the first letter of every word be capitalized to make it easier to read. So hit enter when you're done, and your code should look like this. I'm going to make my font larger so that it's easier for you to read. So one thing I want you to notice is after public class, it's got the name of my program, and this name matches the name of the file that's in the tab exactly, except without the .java, which is a file extension that tells you what kind of file this is. That's really important. If you change this to something else, like Mr. D exercises, your program won't work anymore. You see all that red underlining? If you hover your mouse over it, it says class Mr. D exercises is public and should be declared in a file named blah, blah, blah. So maybe you don't know what that means, but what that means is it's saying the name of your program, where you say it in the text here, has to match the file that you created. And it's difficult to rename the file, so really you should just always rename your program to match the file name. And if I ever give you a program that has a different name here, that's okay, because it's just the name of the program. It won't affect what actually runs when you run your program. So the last thing we need is we need to tell the computer what the main part of the program is. So you might notice, well, why don't you do this? Put your mouse on top of one of these curly braces. When you do, you see that it highlights the other one. That's because these always come in pairs. Even if I were to put spaces here, you see that it knows that these two are matched up together. So that's called a block of code. And what you type always has to be between these two braces. So I'm going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to type PSVM, which stands for Public Static Void Main. If you hit Tab, it will complete the rest of it. You can actually type out the complete words, public static void main, string, bracket, bracket, args, and then another set of braces. But obviously that's a lot of typing. And there's a lot of ways that it can go wrong. If you change any part of this, if you make it a capital and it shouldn't be, there will be red underlining and it won't work. You'll also notice that there's a new set of curly braces. This one down here matches with this one up here. So I'm going to get rid of these extra lines. So this is now a program where you're ready to start adding your own lines of Java and run it. This is the handout that I'm giving you that illustrates what I just said. So here's a picture of a screenshot. This is the name of your program, and I'm reminding you that it always has to match the name of the file up here, so you should always change it so they match. And then your code you always type here between these two curly braces. If you don't type it between the two curly braces, again, that will probably underline in red and tell you something is wrong. What I want you to do now is I want you to break your program on purpose in several ways, just so that you see what it looks like. So let's start by making sure that we have one that works. Type SOUT for system.out.println and hit tab. And then inside some double quotes, put whatever you want to display. I'm going to display hello. And then you can run your program by hitting the green arrow. So you should see down here it says hello. If you change this to Bob, and then you run it again, you'll see down here it displays Bob after you run it by clicking the green arrow. So let's break this in various ways. In fact, I'm going to pause the video, and you should try and see if you can figure out what I changed to break it. Okay, do you see any differences? Clearly, the word system is in red. And if you hover your mouse over the word system, let's click on it and hover over, it says cannot resolve symbol. Whenever it says cannot resolve, that means it doesn't recognize something, which means that you typed it wrong, which is normal. So what I did was I changed this from uppercase to lowercase. Okay, let's do another one. In this case, it's, again, underlined in red. And if I hover over the red, if I click and then hover over the red part, it says semicolon expected because I changed it to a colon. What if I leave that out entirely? I can click and hover over it and it says semicolon expected. So the semicolon you write at the end of every single Java statement to tell it that that's the end of your statement. It's sort of like putting a period at the end of your sentence in English. What happens if you forgot to write the public static void main? Let's delete those two. So here, it makes it look like the problem is with println. It says cannot resolve println. And so you might think, wow, maybe I typed this wrong. But what's actually happening is you didn't look at the template and you forgot the main part of your program. So that's why it's really important every single time you sit down to program that you start from something that you know works. And a good way to do that is looking at the template and making sure you follow the steps, and then run a program that just displays something. And then once you know it works, now you can delete that line and go back in and start making changes on the inside. In the next video, I'll give you a quick recap of the lesson. In the video after that, I'll show you a solution to problem 2, and then I'll ask you to come up with your own solution to problem 1.